The concept of the hierarchy of consciousness is best represented by the image of the all-seeing eye. The eye that's being referred to is a presence of consciousness at the central point of view of its own holographic world. That holographic world is defined on a holographic screen that projects images of that holographic world to the central point of view of the observer. In theoretical physics, that holographic screen is understood as an event horizon that arises in an accelerating observer's frame of reference. The holographic principle of quantum gravity tells us that the surface of the event horizon encodes bits of information on pixels, just like a computer screen. Those quantized bits of information are called qubits, which are mathematically represented by matrices. A matrix is a two-dimensional array of numbers that encodes information on the two-dimensional surface of an event horizon. The net effect is that everything the observer can observe in its own holographic world is a form of information encoded on its holographic screen that is projected like a holographic image from the screen to its own point of view at the center of that holographic world. Those projected images are animated in the flow of energy that arises from the observer's own accelerated motion that gives rise to its holographic screen as an event horizon. The big question is, where does the perceiving consciousness of the observer, present at the central point of view of its own holographic world, come from? The Native Americans understood that the individual consciousness of the observer is an individual spirit and called the source of that individual spirit the Great Spirit. In the non-dual tradition of India, the individual spirit is called Atman, and the Great Spirit is called Brahman. The individual spirit is the consciousness present at the central point of view of its own holographic world, while the Great Spirit is best understood as an ocean of pure, undifferentiated consciousness. It is this ocean of pure, undifferentiated consciousness that is the one source of the consciousness present at the central point of view of its own holographic world. The Great Spirit is the one source of all individual spirits. The individual spirit is the observer of its own holographic world. That world consists of objects, which are forms of information projected from the observer's holographic screen and animated in the flow of energy that arises from the observer's own accelerated motion. The observer's perception of objects always occurs in a subject-object relation that is emotional in nature. Emotional refers to the energy of the observer's own accelerated motion. This normal subject-object relation of perception becomes distorted when the observer emotionally identifies itself with its body. The observer's body is the central form of information projected from its own holographic screen to its central point of view and animated in the flow of emotional energy that arises from its own accelerated motion. When the observer emotionally identifies itself with its body, it takes itself to be its body, and it is as though its body is the subject of the subject-object relation of perception. How do we make sense of a world perceived by many individual spirits? The Great Spirit is the one source of all those individual spirits, each of which is present at the central point of view of its own holographic world. The answer is a consensual reality shared by multiple observers, each present at the central point of view of their own holographic world. When their respective holographic screens overlap like a Venn diagram, they can share information. Information sharing explains the nature of the consensual reality. This brings us back to the hierarchy of consciousness. The eye represents the observer, but the triangle represents the hierarchy. The Great Spirit is the source of all individual spirits and is the highest possible level of consciousness. The Great Spirit is best understood as an undivided ocean of pure, undifferentiated consciousness that is the one source of all individual spirits. Please visit the Science and Non-Duality WordPress.com website for further discussion of the hierarchy of consciousness.